Hi everyone, welcome back. Now let's see another concept in Java programming language, that is a final keyword. So now let's see what is this final keyword. What happened if you use the final keyword before the any declaration or a method, means before the variable or a method, what happens? Okay, now let's start. Final keyword in Java programming language. Actually, this final keyword is called as a modifier. We used to call it as a modifier. Why we used to call it as a modifier? Because it modifies the behavior of a variable, method as well as the class. So whatever the variable declaration or the method or the class, before the variable or a method or a class, if you keep the word final, then the behavior is going to be modified. That's why we call it as final keyword is a modifier. It is trying to modify the behavior of the class, variable and the method. So, by using the final keyword, we can prevent value of variables from method overriding and inheritance. So, if you use the final keyword in any variable or a method and the class, what it is going to do? It is trying to prevent the value of a variable. So, the value is not supposed to change. It is fixed. Okay. So, it prevents the method overriding and inheritance. Now let's see an example. Final, F is a small letter. Final int x is equal to 10. So this is an instance variable. If you keep it inside a class, it is an instance variable. If it is inside a method, then it is a just initialization. Okay, local variable with initialization. Okay, final int x is equal to 10. Suppose if int x is equal to 10, that is x is equal to 10. If we keep it as a final, then we can't change the value. It is fixed. Suppose final int x is equal to 10. Now I am trying to increment the x. What happened? It shows an error. Why it shows an error? Because final values cannot be changed. So 1 point, final values cannot be changed. Remember this point, cannot be changed. So whatever the variable or a class or a method, if you declare it as a final, you can't able to change the value. Means initialize some value to that variable. You cannot change because it is a final. Final keyword can be applied to instance variables. You can apply this to instance variables. You can apply to class variables and local variables. You already know the variables are of 3 types: instance variable, class variable and local variable. Okay, so for all these variables, you can apply the final keyword. Whenever you apply the final keyword to those variables, those values cannot be changed. Okay, so, and one more point, final keyword must be initialized. Otherwise, compile time error occurs. Because if you initialize, then only you are not supposed to change. For declaration, there is no use because you have to assign some value. Whenever you assign a value, then it becomes a fixed value to that variable. It's a class variable or whatever it may be, instance or the local variable. So another point, what you had learned, first thing is the final keyword cannot be changed. Value cannot be changed. That is one point. Another point is final must be initialized. Final must be initialized. Must be initialized. So this is another important point. Final value cannot be changed. Final must be initialized. Okay. I said if you didn't initialize, then the compile time error occurs. So see this example. The class sample. So I declared a variable with the final. I didn't initialize here. So public static void main stringer. So inside the main, I'm just creating an object. So directly I can call this variable because this is a class variables can be accessed directly. So object is created new sample.a. So this is another way of calling this. New, created an object sample and I'm printing try to a. So then what will be the output? Output will be the error. Why it is error? Because final variable must be initialized. Otherwise error will occur. Otherwise, error will occur. It doesn't prepare the garbage value also, the error will be occurred. So final keyword must be initialized. The variable whatever that is declared with a final, it must be initialized. Okay, so let's see another example. So is this program executes or not? Let's check. First try to observe the program. Sample final int a. Again I had done the same thing. I didn't initialize, but what I have done here, I have created a constructor, sample constructor. Inside the constructor I initialize the value. Inside the constructor I initialize the value. So now within the main I am trying to print by creating the object new sample dot a. So I try to print this value. Is my program executes? Yes, executes. It is valid. It is valid code. So then output, why it is valid? Why it is valid? Because it is also called whatever this here it is a is equal to 10. So it is also called as an initialization. So this is another type of initialization. You declare the variable as a final and you initialize the value here inside the constructor. So it is another type of initialization. Okay. So here whatever it may be, so the output, what will be the output? The output you are going to print, it's a 10 value. The one point you have to remember, students, the constructor and final. So this is a constructor, right? This is a constructor. The constructor and the final both executes at a time. So that's why it won't display any error. So the final keyword and the constructor both will execute at a time. So whenever both are executed at a time, it automatically the A is going to be initialized as a 10. So the final will be initialized with a 10 only, because both are executed at the same time. The final and the constructor both executes at a time. So that's why it doesn't display any error. It doesn't display any error. Okay, let's have one more example. The final aim of this here is, at the end of this you have to get the complete clarity on the final. So the final must, whatever the value that is initialized, so that the value cannot be changed if you declare it as a final. The final must be initialized. Okay. So now let's see. Is this program executes? Just have a look on this. Is this program executes? So here I have declared it, but I didn't initialize. So you will get it in the previous example what I said. So I had created a constructor, there I had initialized. But here also I had taken, instead of constructor, I have taken a method. So is my program executes? No. It will not execute. Why? Why it is not execute? You will get an error. Why? Because the final and the constructor both will execute at the same time, but the method and the final will not execute at the same time. So obviously error will come, right? So final int a void show, this is a method. What type of method? It is an instance method. So to access an instance method, the object has to be created. Object has to be created to allocate instance method. So d.show is called. So whenever d.show is called, d.a, that is with object reference, I am calling this, but it is already declared it as a final. Okay. So the first error is, it is invalid. You will get error. So output is error. So what is the error? Okay. It has to be the final variable must be initialized. So you will say, ma'am, I already initialized here, but inside the method I already initialized, but why it is showing an error? The final variable, whatever it is there, that is already initialized. Okay. So why? Because it is called an assignment. Called as an assignment, not an initialization. It is called an assignment. I am assigning 10 value to A. Okay. But it is declared as a final. In the previous, that is a constructor. In the constructor, if you declare it is an initialization. So if you declared here, this is an initialization. So let's see this. See here, this is an initialization. It's not an assignment. The constructor with a inside the constructor you are initializing. So this is an initialization. The constructor and final both will execute at same time. So no problem. But here this is an instance method. Inside the instance method, whatever you had it, this is an assignment. 10 value is assigned to A. Because show is a method. Here it is not constructor. It is instant method. It is not a constructor. So that's why it is showing an error. Okay, the output is error. So let's see one more program. Okay, so here let's see. Let's observe the example 4. Example 4 is my program executes. Is my program executes. So here I have declared instead of variable, before the method I am declared it as a final. Is my program class A, this is a super class, class B is a subclass, extends a super class. Okay, so it will call here. So whenever the class B is execute, this is the only code snippet I had written. So whenever the class B, first class A is going to be loaded here. Class A loaded, that is final void show, it's loaded A class. Again void show I am calling with B class. Is my program executes? No. You will get output is error. Why ma'am? Why it is an error? Because method cannot be overridden. Because method cannot be overridden. So if you declare, this is I already explained the third point. Methods cannot be overridden. If you declare the final, then it cannot be overridden. So here the void show and here the void show, both void shows only. Okay, the same name. So the methods cannot be overridden. Error. Now let's see this one as just simple code snippet. Final. So far we have declared the final to the methods and the variables. Now let's declare a final to the class. What happened? Final class. Class B extends A. What happened? Error. Output is error. Why the output is error? Because final class cannot be inherited. Cannot be inherited. This is a starting point, whatever I said. Final class cannot be inherited. So these are the 4 points you have to remember that. So the final must be initialized. Okay. Final cannot be values prevents the method overridden and inheritance. Inheritance and the overriding is not possible if you use it as a final keyword. So we can prevent value of a variable by using the final keyword. We can prevent the value of variable by method overriding and inheritance. So if you declare a method with a final, you can't be override. If you declare a class with a final, the classes cannot be inherited. So don't use. So if you want to declare, you can declare, but don't use the extends. Okay. So that is inherited. So inherited is not possible. It is final. It is declared. You can't inherit this into another class. Okay. This is about the final keyword, students. Still, if you are facing any doubts, please let me know. Thank you.